Participants are waiting in the lobby. To admit all participants in the lobby, press *21.
Good afternoon. My name is Julia Burgess, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Policy and Bylaw Standing Committee, standing in for Chair Connie Buckler. I'd like to start the meeting with describing what the meeting is. This is a business meeting of the board. All discussions and materials must be free of content, which is contrary to the Ontario Human Rights Code and other laws of Ontario and Canada. All behavior must be courteous and respectful at all times. A person whose behavior disrupts a meeting or whose remarks are felt to be offensive or inappropriate will be called to order and given an immediate opportunity to withdraw their remarks. Refusal may result in eviction from the meeting. At this time, I would like to call the meeting to order and give our acknowledgement of our traditional lands. We acknowledge that we are on land and surrounded by water, originally inhabited by Indigenous peoples who have traveled this area since time immemorial. This territory is within the lands honored by the Wampum Treaties, agreements between the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenni Lenape, and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Specifically, we would like to acknowledge the presence of the Huron-Wendat peoples and the Three Fires Confederacy, which is Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture while remaining committed to moving forward respectfully with all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. That brings us to our attendance, and we have regrets, as I mentioned, from Trustee Buckler. And thank you, Trustee Cook, as a member of the committee, and also as in the audience in the gallery, we have an additional trustee. And online, we have Chair ex officio Gail Hatfield. Hi, Gail.
Hi, I don't know if I'm chair ex officio.
You're chair ex officio, chair of the board, and you're here in your ex officio capacity.
As a member of the committee.
As a member of the committee. Yeah.
Correct.
Ex officio
Thank
member
you.
of the committee, right. Okay, so we have the attendance, and I'm looking for the approval of the agenda.
I'll move.
Okay, I see Trustee Cook, and I hear support from Trustee Hatfield. Are there any additions or anything like that, any amendments, anything? I don't hear any, so as printed, all those in favor of approval of the agenda?
Support.
Thank you, that's unanimous. Okay, any declarations of conflict of interest for the Policy and Bylaw Standing Committee? I don't hear any, so we'll move on to item F, which is the approval of the minutes of the special meeting that we had on January 28th, where we selected our chair, et cetera, and our timing. Do I see it?
I'll move.
Okay, Trustee Hatfield moves it, and I'll support it. It's fine. It's committee rules. It's allowed. Any additions or corrections, anything to the minutes of January 28th meeting? I don't hear any. So we'll call for the vote for the approval of the minutes. All those in favor of the approval of the minutes as printed? Approval of the minutes?
Support.
Yep. Support. Okay. There were no delegations at the time of agenda prep, but we do have two delegations. And under our new bylaws, I think there's a 5-minute, and I think, oh, there you go. It's up there on the sign that will tick down. And first at G1 on the approved agenda, we have Selena Hamilton speaking to the Ontario Human Rights Code and Gender Identity / Expression. If you could come forward. Thank you, Selena. You see the time, and start when you're ready. Oh, sorry.
Recognizes that each person has a right to equal treatment in the areas of housing, contract, employment, goods and services, facilities, and membership, regardless of age, ancestry, color, race, place of origin, citizenship, creed, disability, marital status, gender identity, sex, and sexual orientation. I'm here to express my concerns regarding certain policies and regulations that have been implemented within our education system, and I believe it is essential to consider how these policies impact the dignity and respect of all students. The Ontario Human Rights Code does not at any point stipulate that new services, facilities, housing, or preferential treatment be provided to any person based on immutable or variable traits. The truth is we are all protected under the Human Rights Code, and no person may infringe on the rights of others or subject them to bullying, harassment, or discrimination. It is important to recognize and respect the unique needs of every student. However, I'm concerned about the current approach that categorizes biological females identically with males who identify as female. Many biological females may feel uncomfortable or stripped of their dignity when required to share private spaces such as washrooms with males. This situation can lead to breaches of privacy, respect, and safety. Furthermore, I am worried about the potential risks associated with allowing males in female washrooms and the impact this might have on the physical and sexual safety of girls. Stripping a person of their consent and volition goes far beyond bullying. It is a form of oppression. The school board has no reason to create barrier-free access to washrooms and change rooms. Segregation by sex is addressed in Section 20 of the Ontario Human Rights Code. It reads, under restriction of facilities by sex, the right under Section 1 to equal treatment with respect to services and facilities without discrimination because of sex is not infringed where the use of the services or facilities is restricted to persons of the same sex on the ground of public decency. It is also deeply concerning to consider the impact on girls when they are forced to compete against male peers in sports. The situation can be seen as a form of bullying, as females are often outmatched in size and strength by their male counterparts. Additionally, it can lead to discrimination, as females may find it difficult to excel in athletics when competing with males. Furthermore, discrimination is also perpetuated when females are prohibited from participating in extracurricular activities due to concerns for their own safety. Additionally, the school board is attempting to protect a student's expression of their lived gender identity while simultaneously creating two lives for the students, one at home and one at school. Encouraging this divide in identity can create mental and emotional instability, as well as lead to alienation from their family due to secrecy. Gender dysphoria is still considered a mental health condition in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders of the American Psychiatric Association. Is the school board licensed to diagnose and treat mental health conditions? Are school principals, teachers, and staff prepared for litigation to follow when they create and execute a gender expression plan for a minor without medical or parental consultation? I remind the school board that parents have full rights to their child's municipal records as upheld by the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, the Ontario Student Record Guideline, and the Education Act. The OSR Guideline, paragraph 4.2 states the parents of a student have the right to have access to the student's OSR until the student becomes an adult, age 18. Under both the Children's Law Reform Act and the Divorce Act 1985, the legal right of a non-custodial parent to have access to a child includes the right to make inquiries and to be given information concerning the child's health, education, and welfare. The Education Act, section 266, states under pupil records, Paragraph 3, a pupil and his or her parent or guardian, where the pupil is a minor, is entitled to examine the record of such pupil. Paragraph 4, where, in the opinion of a student who is an adult or the parent or guardian of a pupil who is a minor, information recorded upon the record of the pupil is inaccurately recorded or not conducive to the improvement of instruction of the pupil, such pupil, parent, or guardian, as the case may be, may in writing request the principal to correct the alleged inaccuracy in or remove the impugned information from such record. This means that neither the student, the school staff, nor the school board may fabricate records or withhold records from parents. If teachers or staff identify a debilitating mental or emotional condition in a student, protocols are in place that begin with the involvement of parents, family doctors, and child services. Similarly, if teachers or staff suspect abuse at home, established procedures are triggered involving police, parents, and child services right from the start. I hope this committee understands that altruistic policies and regulations do not override provincial and federal law. Parents retain absolute authority over their children and have legal recourse for any damages caused by duplicitous education system. Thank you for your time and consideration in this matter. And thank you for the extra time.
No worries. Thank you for that. And I'm going to ask Trustee Cook and Trustee Hatfield if they have any questions of clarification whatsoever. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have one question.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering if you've ever inquired with WEXA about your concerns re the sports matter.
I'm not familiar.
Okay. You know what? I don't have the acronym in front of me, but it's the Collective Windsor-Essex County Secondary School Athletic Association. So 2 A's, couple of C's, I think, couple of S's, whatever. They have policy as well.
Okay. Thank you
regarding
for the
sports.
help. Mm-hmm.
I just wondered if you'd inquired. Okay, thank you. And we're a member of that. Next, I hope I have the pronunciation. Beth Saint-Denis? Or do you prefer St. Denis?
Either works.
Okay, you're on and you have 5 minutes. There you go.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Beth St. Denis. I identify as a Christian adult female. I am a mother, a godmother, and a lifelong resident of Windsor. I am also an English public school supporter. To clarify, I pay taxes to the Public School Board. I do thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight at the Policy and Bylaw Committee meeting. I have read Section 6 of the Governance Bylaw in its entirety and find that my presentation meets the criteria. I also feel my presentation is within the jurisdiction of the Policy and Bylaw Committee's responsibilities. The trustees updated their governance bylaws on December 3rd, 2024. Many citizens of Windsor-Essex County were not aware that the governance bylaws were changed. One of the most notable changes was eliminating delegations from appearing at school board meetings. This was a shock to many residents, with the trustees voting almost unanimously to abolish the speakers list on October 15, 2024. Delegations were the last option for citizens to present concerns in person to items on the agenda at the regularly scheduled board meeting. The trustees have taken away two critical tools for public engagement. I am aware that the governance bylaws suggest other ways to contact the school board, such as directly emailing their trustee and emailing the communications department. In my opinion, these are not sufficient methods for public interaction. I have emailed my trustee as well as other trustees and on multiple occasions with no response. My emails have been respectful and have asked for clarification on specific issues. I am sure you can appreciate my frustration that as a taxpayer, I am being ignored through these mechanisms. I am curious why the taxpayers were not consulted about these governance changes before they were implemented. Would it not be a logical conclusion to consult the people you are accountable to on how the public should be able to interact with the trustees? I have other serious concerns that fall under your scope of practice as the Policy and Bylaw Committee. It is imperative that I speak to you directly with my concerns regarding the gender identity and expression in school regulation. I have read the document and submitted my feedback. However, you need to hear directly from a citizen on a regulation that I believe needs serious revisions. This document states, quote, all students have the right to use a washroom or change room that best corresponds to the student's lived gender identity, regardless of the student's sex assigned at birth. The K-1 survey results from 2023 reflect that the vast majority of students, 89%, identify as male or female. This policy puts the health and safety of 89% of our students at risk. What is your action plan to deal with the psychological harm that will come from letting boys into girls' washrooms and change rooms? This policy facilitates a breach of security to vulnerable children. Quote, there is no age limit on making an accommodation request. Young students have the same rights to privacy and to have accommodations made on their behalf with or without their parents' guardians' knowledge, end quote. Parents or guardians are the child's legal authority. Parental authority refers to parents' rights and responsibilities towards their children from the minute they are born until they turn 18. Under their parental authority, parents make decisions that affect their children's well-being. Under parental authority, parents have these rights and responsibilities towards their children: custody, supervision, physical and psychological protection, health and safety, and education. As a child's legal authority, parents or guardians must be consulted on every aspect of a child's life. School board employees do not have the right to interfere with a parent-child relationship under any circumstances. These are extremely concerning policies. The job of this committee is to do intensive research and make informed decisions that are in the best interest of our students. You have been entrusted to represent the citizens of this community in the area of public education. This is a serious responsibility that should not be taken lightly. One way to rebuild public trust is to release the feedback submitted to the Greater Essex County District School Board on the gender regulation. I am extremely confident that the majority of citizens who submitted feedback want this policy completely revised. As public servants, you have a duty to take public feedback and implement it for the best interests of the children. I appreciate the opportunity to bring these issues to your attention. Please consider reversing your decision to prevent the public or delegations from speaking at regular school board meetings. I implore you to release the public feedback on the gender identity and expression in school regulation. Making significant revisions to this regulation is doing what is best to protect the innocence of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. St. Denis. And if you have any questions of clarification from Trustee Cook or online from Trustee Hatfield.
No.
Any questions of clarification? And I have none. Yours is very straightforward, and we'll take that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Seeing no further delegations, we're on to Right, wrong one. There we go. Staff reports are nil, and so we have a new piece of business, I1, and that is the policy and regulations to rescind. I'm going to read it out loud. The recommendation is that the Policy and Bylaw Committee recommend to the board that policy and regulation landscaping and policy and regulation, overtime non-bargaining unit employees be rescinded. Anybody want to put that on the
I'll
floor?
move it.
Trustee Hatfield move it,
Move it.
trustee Cook, okay, is supporting. And that is first one. Any questions, any discussion about that policy? Rescinding it. I don't hear any. I think it's pretty self-explanatory what it is. So if there's no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the recommendation to rescind the policy?
Support.
And that's unanimous. Thanks very much. Moving on to 1.2, which is the policy and regulation for naming and renaming board facilities. Which is,
I'll put it on the floor.
trustee Hatfield moves it, trustee Cook supports it, and it's on the floor. And it starts on page 10 and goes for a little bit. It goes till page 20.
I have some amendments I'd like to put on the floor.
Thank you, ma'am. It goes till page 28. So the motion's on the floor. The mover has some amendments to suggest. You have the floor, trustee Hatfield.
Yep, thank you. Some are pretty simple. On page 13, under the title, the role of trustees, the second bullet, by majority vote, approve one of the proposed names, provided alternative. Everybody with me?
One moment, just a second. Is it page 13? I don't see that. Page 11 in our, page 11 in our package. You mean page 13 of the policy or page of the package?
Under the heading Roles and Responsibilities, Board of Trustees.
I got it. That is page 2 of the policy, page 11 in our package. Okay, go.
Second bullet, Board of Trustees, second bullet, by majority vote, approve one of the proposed names, provide an alternative. I would like to amend that to say provide an alternative name for clarification. I think the word name has to go in there as opposed to, we can't provide an alternative process, for example.
And the rest of the sentence, or refer the matter back, is the same? So it's the addition, just for clarification, it's the addition of the word name in between the word alternative and or.
Correct.
Okay. Is there support? And there is support for that amendment. Would you like to discuss that? I think you kind of alluded to it, but any further discussion? I think we might be ready to vote on that one. All those in favor of that amendment?
Support.
And that is supported unanimously. Do you have another amendment, ma'am?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. It's the same page. It's the role of the, at the very bottom, it starts the role of the, sorry if my voice is a little bit off, but I'm sick, sorry.
We're glad that you're even present, knowing the circumstances. Thanks.
Well, so am I. So am I. So the second bullet, I would like to rephrase the...
Excuse me, ma'am, under what heading? Committee members at the bottom?
Yes, the second bullet. I'd like to rephrase it to say the committee will vote using a system outlined at the first meeting by the committee chair. Then I'd like it to say to determine a short list of school names to recommend to the board. I think that's better wording than what's implied with the word preferred.
Okay, just for clarification, I'm going to reread it because I wrote it down. Your amendment is to, after the word chair, committee chair, under the heading of committee members, after the word committee chair, to insert the words to determine a short list of school names to recommend to the board.
Correct.
And I don't know if the board has the capital B. Yes, the capital B in this case. So recommend, not suggest? That's a change from, yeah? Recommend? Yep, okay. Support for
think
that
that's
amendment?
what the-
Support for that amendment from trustee Cook? And would you like to discuss, and I think you gave your reasoning.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm good.
I would like to say, I'll just declare, I like that better because that really does show the work. The work is to then determine a short list of school names to recommend to the board, and that's reflected in the rest of the document. So I support that amendment
Yeah.
for sure, too. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Support.
Obviously, so that's unanimous amendment as well. Anything else, ma'am?
There's a couple one medium. The next page where it starts the process, the heading is the process at the top. Are you with me?
Yes,
And
that's
then there-
page 3 of 7 of the policy and our package page number 12. And it's, the heading is
then,
process.
Yeah. In the second section there, it says number 2. I'd like you to go to the second sentence in number 2. Once the applications are received, the area trustees, comma, the director of education, and the board chair will determine the makeup of the committee, is what I'm proposing, because throughout the whole process, it's the chair that ends up dealing with it all when it comes to the board. And I think that it would be helpful to have the chair involved in that step 2 of the process, along with the area trustees and the director.
Is there support for that amendment? There's support for that amendment from trustee Cook. Would you like to discuss it anymore?
So just to say, I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Strangely, I'm not going to support that amendment, but you've got your, 2/3. But I will say that because the chair of the board is ex officio on any committees in our bylaws. I think that the chair of the board is implicitly always welcome, even at, what's it called? A naming committee. So I think it's.
Well, but this is
Like an expectation rather than you're welcome and you may not want to attend, but, yeah.
Sorry if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
I think this is different because we're defining a process. We're not talking about the committee, the makeup of the committee. Yes, the chair would be ex officio because it's a board committee, but we're talking about a process. And for that reason, I think that it needs to be spelled out. And I think that that would be helpful as well for the public and for committee members, the advisory committee members, to be upfront with them about the process from the beginning in the document, rather than the chair may just show up into that process and nobody knows how or why that happened. So I don't think there's any harm done by stating it clearly in the process.
Can I suggest an amendment on your amendment and say the chair of the board rather than just the board chair? Because we refer to the
yes,
chair of the
yes.
committee with a capital C and a capital B for the board.
Yeah.
If I could
That's a
suggest
good
that.
idea.
Okay, so to be clear, in the process number 2, in the second sentence, it will read, striking the word, after the word trustees, with a S in brackets, adding a comma, and striking the word and, so it'll say trustees, comma, director of education, and then and the chair of the board.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay? So that, on the, if we can have a little quick vote on the amendment to the amendment. Okay, we've already got the,
Or,
yeah, we already got the majority, so there we go. And then on the amendment, vote on the amendment. Okay, and that's passed unanimously too. And is there something else you said?
yeah, section 7, like keep going down till you get to, wait a minute, it's the, oh wait, keep going. Yeah.
Section 7 is under committee meetings, and it's on our
So this is,
page 15, or 6 of 7. Mhm.
so on my version of the agenda, it tells me I'm on page 17, section 7. I don't know what happened here. I don't know why.
Well, the electronic version of it might paginate it different, I'm not sure, but if you're looking under number
okay.
7 in the policy, or in the reg rather, number 7 in the reg, does it start with at a public meeting of the Board of Trustees, and the areas struck and
Yeah.
superintendent? Yeah, okay, keep going.
Yes, yes. Okay, so the third sentence that starts, the Board of Trustees will then vote to choose one of the suggestions, comma, provide an alternative name, like we did up above, like the beginning of the document. So to be consistent, you need to put the word name after alternative name or refer the matter. Are you following me?
I am. I'm going to repeat it back, okay? So what we have for the amendment is on number 7, which is on page 6 of 7 of the policy. After the word alternative in the third sentence, it starts, that sentence starts, the Board of Trustees will then vote. After the word alternative, to place the word name. There might be a comma afterwards or whatever.
Yes.
And the rest of it, which is a new thing to, or refer the matter back to the naming with a rationale, et cetera, that stays. So it's just to insert the word name between the word alternative and the word or in the third sentence.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So support, we're going to vote for the amendment. Support from Trustee Cook and Burgess and Hatfield, I'm assuming. So that amendment passes.
Yeah. Thank you. And then one more, and it continues where we are now with the last two sentences. If I'd like to change the structure of those two sentences. If I could read what I'd like to amend, if the trustees vote to refer back to the advisory committee, the committee shall reconvene to select up to 3 new names. I think it's more positive expression than if the board does not accept the recommendation.
Okay, so I want to be sure what I'm getting this because I'm not sure I wrote quickly enough. So with the new section that says, if the board does not accept the recommendation, the naming advisory committee shall reconvene to select up to 3 new names as appropriate. You're saying to strike that whole thing or just add a certain word?
No, strike that sentence.
Strike the sentence starting with if and ending with appropriate.
Correct. And then it would be
Trustees vote.
if the trustees vote to refer back to the
I beg your pardon, I missed the
committee.
first words. If the trustees,
If the trustees,
thank you.
yes, vote to refer back to the advisory committee, comma, the committee shall reconvene to select up to 3 new names.
Thank you. I'm going to read it back and you tell me if I've got it right. If the trustees vote to refer back to the advisory committee, comma, the committee shall reconvene to select up to 3 new names.
Yes,
Okay, that's your substitute sentence for the sentence that's being struck, starting with if and ending with appropriate. Support for that amendment from Trustee Cook. Any further explanation?
I just think it's a better expression than what's there about not accepting the recommendations.
Okay, we're ready for the vote. All those in favor, and I think we've got 3 votes on that, right, Trustee Hatfield?
Yeah.
Okay, so that amendment is carried as well. Any further amendments?
And then just the next sentence, I don't like the word containing. A new report to the Board of Trustees containing 3 new names. I think it should say a new report to the Board of Trustees with the 3 new names. Simple.
Okay, I'm just
Strike
going
the
to.
word containing.
Yep. Okay,
Strike the
I'm
word
just going
containing
to.
and replace it. Yep.
Okay, I'm just going to
ahead,
ask,
sorry.
just to be very clear, do I need this public mic on? No, I can shut that off. Okay. In the first amendment in this section, you had up to 3 new names. Do you want to end it with the 3 new names? It is already saying 3 new names, but what if they come back with 2? It's up to 3.
Yeah.
So I don't
Right,
want to
right,
pick,
right.
but I'm just saying if you're still, what you've suggested
what's the
is
new
to
name?
strike the word containing and insert the word with the.
With the new names.
Can I suggest up to the 3 new names? Or no, that sounds awkward too.
Sure.
With up to 3 new names. Would you consider that?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Let me see if with up to is okay. Yep, we've got that. So to be clear, the next amendment is to strike the word containing and replace it with the words with up to.
Yes.
That's on the floor. All those in support of the amended sentence, and I think that passes too. There you go. Okay. Any
Thank
further
you.
amendments, ma'am?
Yep. No, that's enough. I just want to say I appreciate the work that went into this with the amendments. I think it's much better presented to, especially for the public to follow the whole policy. And I also appreciate that it's going out for a public consultation. So thank you to everybody who was involved with that.
Any further amendments?
No.
Okay, so we have an amended document, and all the amendments have been suggested by Trustee Hatfield. Trustee Cook, do you have any amendments to suggest at all? Okay. I want to also thank everybody. I appreciate that the name of the committee is the Board Facilities Advisory Committee, renaming of Board Facilities Advisory Committee. I appreciate that. I think that clarifies the role in one word as a descriptor. Who, you know, we appreciate any advice, but the actual decision-making is held at the board. So I think that clears that up, and I appreciate that. This has had so much work in the last few years, and I want to also thank everybody who's helped clarify the process. It can be an emotional one. It can be one that feels heavily vested with a community or communities. So I think this is a grand improvement. So we're ready for the vote. Can we vote for the recommendation that the policy and regulation naming and renaming board facilities be posted for public consultation as amended? All those in favor?
As amended.
Yep, as amended.
Support.
All those in favor? Support? And that's unanimous. Thanks very much.
Support.
Appreciate that. Okay, next item is 1.3, and that is the Policy and Regulation Trustee Code of Conduct. And there's a recommendation that the Policy and Bylaw Committee recommend to the board that the Regulation Trustee Code of Conduct be approved as presented. Now, this policy would have had to be revised because of new provincial regulations. So it comes before us. I'm just trying to get the page.
So,
Okay, do you have an amendment, or would you like to put it on the floor? Trustee Hatfield?
I would I'd like to, put it on the floor with my understanding that the document has just been updated to meet what we're required to have in there.
So you're putting it on the floor, and we have support to put it on the floor by Trustee Cook. And I just want to, I thought I had a note, so I just want to make sure I don't lose it. Yes, to note that section 1 through 31 of the Trustee Code of Conduct Regulation was updated on September 17th, 2024 to comply with the Ontario Regulation 312/24 Member of School Boards Code of Conduct. And this revision complies with the new section 218.3 of the Regulation 306/24 Integrity Commissioners and process for alleged breaches of the Code of Conduct with certain paragraphs named. So all of that updating has been vetted through legal and every other way. And are there any comments now that it's on the floor to the mover?
No, I'm good.
Okay, any comments here? And I think what we put in was everything that we needed to put in, and I don't think there's any change between what we would have and what has been suggested as far as I'm concerned, except for maybe the renumbering and things like that. And we have changed the our selection for the alternate, if it's chair and vice chair, to reflect our there's a little typo on page 33. The Learning, Equity, and Wellbeing Committee, and to alternate with the chair of the Finance and Facility Services Committee. And so that's intact. I hope we never have to use it. And I hope it's all good. Okay. Are we ready for the vote?
Yep.
Okay. Without any amendment as printed, all those in favor?
Support.
Support, and that's unanimous. Thank you. Next is the Policy and Regulation 1.4, Policy and Regulation Electronic Meetings and Meeting Attendance. I have a few good questions here, so I'm hoping that they can be answered. But we have actually a situation right now with electronic attendance, so this will give me an opportunity anyway to get some questions answered. But anybody want to put it on the floor? Trustee Cook puts it on the floor. Trustee Hatfield, support? Okay.
Yeah.
Trustee Cook, any comments? I don't. Okay. Trustee Hatfield, do you have any questions or discussion or whatever?
I just have one amendment to propose, and I'm just trying to find it. Maybe Melissa could help me find the right page because I'm not tuning into it. It's so if a trustee wants to apply under the special circumstances to attend electronically, they submit their request to the chair of the board. Then if the chair of the board wants to submit for approval, the chair would submit to the vice chair.
Correct.
And then it says, oh, I found it.
1C?
Yes, it says, if the trustee making a request under Section 1 is the chair of the board, the chair shall submit the request and reasons to the vice chair of the board, or if the board has no vice chair, I don't think we really need to say that for our board, but I think it should say, or if the vice chair is not available, then to the trustee of the month in accordance with our bylaws. We could put in brackets the bylaw that allows for trustee of the month.
That was one of my questions, and I actually had something prepared. So are you going to be prepared for like the wording for that? What to
So where
strike?
it's
Because I had something to just strike those and say as determined in bylaws or as per Roberts. Because there's a possibility that the trustee of the month isn't available or possibly in conflict or something too. And that way it defers to what we have already in our bylaws, if that applies. And if it can't be fulfilled by our bylaws, then to defer to the next rule.
This comes from the template, and I think this is stated like this from the template from OPSPA as well as the language of the regulation. So I wanted to clean it up a bit as it applies to our board.
Correct. And this is committee rules, so we'll just have a discussion. It's on the floor. Did I put it on the floor? Yeah, let's put it on the floor. So we did discuss this ad nauseum, at the OPSPA table too, and it is a template. And trustees, this is one template that a lot of boards are nuancing to fit their board, obviously. And
Right.
so I think we're on the same page. It's just a matter of wording. So I think or if the board has no vice chair, that just means I think if no vice chair is present or able or whatever, it's an awkward kind of way of doing it because we may have a vice chair, but it might be the vice chair who can't because of whatever circumstance, to another trustee of the board is what I had flagged, I think similarly to you.
I think to another trustee, I don't think it should remain like that.
Correct. So what do you want to strike? Because I have something, but what did you want to exactly say?
I wanted to replace to another trustee of the board. I wanted to replace that with to the trustee of the month in brackets, whatever the bylaw reference is, number, bylaw. I don't know what that one is.
Okay, I don't have a copy of the bylaws. It's in the other desk over there, but the number assigned in the bylaws to the mention of the trustee of the month.
Yes.
So to strike the words to another trustee of the board, or if the board has no vice chair, to the trustee of the month, quote the number, and then that's it?
Yep. I think to another trustee of the board is too vague.
I agree. I was going to, like I said, I have an amendment. And that is supported by Trustee Cook. Just waiting for the number to see if we can determine that. If not, we can assume that we're going to get the number correct.
Yeah, I just noticed that in other places in this document, we do have in brackets a bylaw reference with the number.
Yeah. So, okay. Any discussion? The change is to strike the word to another trustee of the board, to insert to the trustee of the month and the number in the bylaws that it pertains to. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just think that the bylaws, if we just say the bylaws like the rest of the document, it actually refers it and you have to kind of read it. I like the number. To strike to another trustee of the board is, I'm on the same page there. I was going to do or as determined in the bylaws, but I just don't know what happens if our bylaws don't capture it, because the other thing that our bylaws have, if there's nothing in the bylaws that capture it, then we go to our parliamentarian authority, which is Roberts, and it's captured in there.
I would just suggest that's too complicated. I just keep it simple.
Okay, so the motion's on the board as an amendment to insert, to strike to another trustee of the board, to the trustee of the month with the number. We're going to get the number. We're ready for the vote. All those in favor? Trustee Hatfield.
Support.
Supports the amendment, and that's all you need. So we go on. And is there any other amendment?
Not for me.
Oh, one moment. Can you use your...
I think we have to carry that down to D, the vice chair, or the chair of the vice chair, or the trustee of the month. I mean, we have to be consistent.
I think it's covered by or other trustee as applicable. But if you want to specify, I don't have an objection. But where did everybody
Okay, I'm
go?
going to ask Trustee Cook directly. So, Trustee Cook, are you saying to strike the word as, or other trustee as applicable and substitute it with the same words after the word vice chair, the chair, vice chair, or after the word or, to the trustee of the month and the number? Okay. Do you want to put that on as an amendment?
Yeah, I mean, we can put that.
Okay. So the proposed amendment is under 1D, after the word or in the first sentence. So we'll read the chair, vice chair, or to the trustee of the month. And again, quoting the number in the bylaws that refers to the trustee of the month. And that puts 3 people in a pecking order if for any reason of availability. Is that right?
That's fine.
Trustee Cook? Okay. Okay. Any other comment on the amendment? Ready for the vote? Okay. With that amendment in mind, all those in favor?
Support.
Okay, so that amendment flies. Trustee Hatfield, anything else? Trustee Cook, anything else?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so this is all my questions then. And it's about the process. And this is good segue because I just want to know who's next, because we might be quoting the same thing over and over again. So now I'm in 2. This is under the circumstances. It refers to identified in section 2. So the circumstances, it's page 51. And it's 3. The chair shall not approve, I think I found it awkward or something, I didn't quite understand. The chair shall not approve a request for a trustee to participate by electronic means in a regular board meeting or regular committee of the whole board meeting if the request would result in fewer than, oh no, that's not the section, sorry, number 4. I beg your pardon. I just wrote it on top. Okay, so section 4. Number 4, sorry, in section 2. The vice chair or other member of the board shall not approve a request for the chair of the board to participate by electronic means in a regular board meeting or regular committee of the whole board meeting unless the chair's designate will be physically present in the meeting room. So my question I had here.
So could we just do a find and replace throughout the
Yeah.
document where that term comes up and just fix it?
Right. Because it refers to the chair's designate rather than the vice chair or the trustee of the month, or if they're not there, by who's in the bylaw or whatever. So I think that's another place there. So I would think that the words that we have to strike is chair's designate and put whatever else fits the best. Does that make sense? I don't have the exact words because I have here vice chair selected by the bylaw, selected by who? What? Okay. So I would think that the vice chair or trustee of the month in that pecking order. Okay. So can I have that as an amendment? And Trustee Cook is supporting that amendment. It's a committee, so it's we don't really, but okay. Yep. There we go. All in favor. We're all there. Okay. The next one. The next one. I will see if I can get my understanding here. It's number 5. Chair of the committee of the board, other than the chair of a committee of the whole board or their designate, shall be physically present in the meeting room of every regular meeting of the committee of the board. The committee chair or designate may participate by electronic means if approved in accordance with section 1. So there we go. We've already, if we change that, that new thing will apply. Yeah. And provided that at least one other member of the committee who is also a trustee of the board is physically present in the meeting room. Yep. So that's okay because the other trustee of the board doesn't have to have any title or pecking order. But since we've changed section 1, I think we don't have to do that anymore. Okay. Great. Okay, so I'm just going to go down. Please forgive me to number 8. Same thing, page 51, which is page 2 of 5 of the policy, or the reg. Number 8, effective September 1st, which is the, D-Day on this coming into effect, right? Effective September 1st, 2025, if a trustee fails to be physically present at a regular meeting of the board or a regular meeting of the committee of the whole board, unless their request to attend electronically is approved as set out above and in accordance with, the trustee's seat is vacated. Okay. And again, because we changed section 1, that's okay. I had it here flagged. And that doesn't apply to special, and trustee vacates from 3, and that's okay. Oh, I had a question for administration if I could. Number 11, because I didn't find what it really pertained to, and it goes over to page 52. So the number 11, the last thing. If all schools of the board are closed under an order made in accordance with Ontario Regulation 463/97, then the requirement of the physical attendance at any meetings by a trustee or the director is not required in accordance with the regulation. I was wondering, is that because of the health unit or weather, or how would schools be closed? Or is that holidays, or wouldn't be a holiday? What would it be? And all trustees and student trustees may participate. Oh, and then that's an awkward wording. May participate as of right and without complying with section 1 above. That's what I didn't understand as a sentence. So I'm going to go bottom of 51 up to 52. A trustee or the director of education is not required in accordance with that regulation, and all trustees and student trustees may participate electronically as of right. As a right? As their right? I'm not sure. It just didn't make sense to me. I didn't know what that meant. And without complying with section 1 above. I get the section 1 thing, but I'm just wondering who would have the authority to close all schools? Am I thinking correctly? Like it's the health unit or, yep,
So
the director.
through you, I would say that we've had an example of that previously when schools were ordered to be closed and we had our meetings electronically and nobody physically had to be present. It could also be weather, right? If there's an emergency weather declaration and we're ordered through the city or through emergency that we would have to close all facilities, that would give permission to be able to attend electronically.
Okay, so my assumption is correct. And what are we going to change the word of to? Can we just leave that with you to make sense before it becomes to the board? It just, okay. I won't amend it. We'll just look at it like a little typo. Okay.
I think it is a typo. Sorry, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I've read that. I've read that thing, the template, a million times. I think it is a typo, and I'm hoping that by September 2025 that there's some big amendments coming down to all of this from the ministry. That's my hope.
We live in hope.
Yes, we live in hope on this one.
Okay. Now I have a question because I do have a possible notice of motion, and I have a question about number 13 in this same section on page 3 of 5 of the policy, page 52 in our package. The board shall provide members of the public with the ability to connect electronically to a meeting of the board or of a committee of the board. The electronic means used shall permit the public to hear the meeting, and where permitted by the board, example, a delegate, to participate in a meeting, then all participants in the meeting shall be able to communicate with each other simultaneously and instantaneously. So I think we understand what that means. It's always been about the definition and what's standard for electronic. And I know there's a caveat coming on page 53, sort of a get out of jail card for, bad internet and stuff, which I will express my opinion on. But it does talk specifically, I know in Roberts in the thing and in when we were looking at the template provincially about oral, AURAL, the main criteria is to hear, not necessarily to see, and certainly not necessarily to see in live time, in real time, and not necessarily to archive all visual in real time, because this does refer to not only regular board meetings but committee meetings, and there's a lot of committee meetings. It's a big communication piece on our part. From a logistics point, I know who's listening behind the wall. So I have a question about, to make sure that I've got that right. I see some nodding heads. Well, my question to administration is, in this section, it's for connection electronically to hear and to communicate with each other simultaneous and instantaneously. It's not necessarily to live stream. Am I misinterpreting that, or am I interpreting that correctly? I see nodding heads.
You're
Trustee
correct.
Hatfield, if you can see that I'm interpreting it correctly. It's for simultaneous oral communication is how it's in Roberts, I know.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the other question I have is for 14. It says, at all meetings at which a trustee, including a student trustee, participates by electronic means, it's the responsibility of those trustees to comply with the requirements of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, including in the case of a meeting that is closed to the public, to disconnect from the electronic participation for so long as is necessary in order to so comply. So my question is, how do we enforce that? What are our responsibilities to ensure privacy and confidentiality of items where a trustee is obliged to remove themselves electronically from something that is discussed in private session. So to maintain all those who can hear, but to make sure that those who shouldn't hear or can't hear, who absent themselves, what's the enforcement? What's the trust factor? How do we do that?
So when I set up a meeting, I run it through Teams. Even though it's not a visual, we can run Teams through the phone. And I have the ability to remove or add anybody to that list. So if there was somebody that had a conflict of interest that couldn't participate in a section of the committee of the whole private session, for example, I do have that ability to remove them.
Okay, so they're stuck. They've given you advice that they're there for an electronic meeting and they're on their phone and they're through meetings on their phone, and they've declared that they have a conflict or some other reason that they have to absent themselves from a portion of the meeting. You mute them, or do they have to leave, disconnect, and then reconnect? I just want to know the proof that they're not, like, that we are maintaining privacy and confidentiality.
I can do either or.
You're like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. Okay. And I think the other question I had was sort of similar, so you've answered it, I think. And I noticed that we changed from 4 hours to 3 for notice. Any other? Nobody else had amendments, right? Right.
Okay, I
Okay.
don't.
Yeah. I'm just trying to see what my questions were. On page 53 in our package and page 4 or 5 of the reg. Yeah, I kind of lament on the first little nugget there. Each member is responsible for the connection, etc. And if you have poor quality, then too bad. That does happen, and it is a lament of mine because it does happen, and we sometimes lose it because we're just where we are with the service that we have. I like the clarification on the chair's decision is not debatable, etc. Oh, the proof that they are in a, okay, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4 little arrows down. Trustees participating in private session electronically will be asked by the chair to make a declaration at the beginning of a meeting that they are in a secure location, are using a secure means of connecting to the meeting, and that no one else is able to hear the proceedings. Such declarations will be recorded in the minute. My question is something like the templated declaration of conflict of interest that we have. Is there a script that we can provide to support that procedure? Because it says here it's just a declaration, it's going to be in the minutes. Is there any way that we can ask people who are absenting themselves to sign that they had nobody listening, or they don't have anybody listening and they don't have anybody present? It is, I'm concerned about confidentiality. So
yeah, through you, I would say it would be difficult for them to sign because they're not here physically. But a script from the chair or whoever presiding officer is, for sure, to read, so that it's a consistent every single time, and then for people to actually declare.
So do you declare that you are in a secure room and you have a secure means of connecting and that no one else is able to hear our proceedings? And the answer would be yes, and that would be recorded in the minutes. Okay. So that's my thing. It's just about the logistics of that to make sure that that's in place. And then the last nugget on that page, to keep consistent with the rest of our policies, where it says and the chair state their own name. So I would substitute those words and insert their own name. Okay, page 53 at the bottom. And that's consistent with the rest of our policies. And I think that's the rest of all that I've said. And there are no other amendments? No other discussion? Okay, so we're ready for the vote. So as amended, with all those amendments to the Policy and Bylaw Committee, recommending to the board that the policy and regulation electronic meetings and meeting attendance be approved as presented, as amended. All those in favor? Trustee Cook, Trustee Burgess, Trustee Hatfield. That's unanimous with as amended. Thanks very much. Okay. So now we go on to J. Trustee motions for consideration introduced at a previous meeting. This is so previous, it's ancient history. It's a previous board. This arises from, I want to say December 2020, January 2021, and then this motion came forward April 20th, 2021. I will read it and then I'll just ask, I think, if we can maybe refer this, but I'm not sure. That the GECDSB refer to an ad hoc committee for their recommendation of what is meant by the word session as per our current Robert's Rules of Order, the 12th edition, Chapter 4, 8:4, and any other pertinent sections, as well as determine if any special rules need adoption regarding renewal of motions. I'll put that on the floor as it is, but it will need a bit change. Is there any support for putting it on the floor? We don't need it because we're in a committee, but any support? I'm going to go on because we're using committee rules. The point at the time was because the bylaws were not in their cyclical review, and policy committee did not have bylaws in their terms of reference, and that it would have had to have been an ad hoc committee being struck just for this one issue, or to refer it to policy if policy chair accepted it on the agenda. So what happens is the definition of a session, I can't remember if it's in our new bylaws. I do not believe it is. It was not captured, and this has remained as an outstanding thing. And in Robert's Rules, 12th edition, if you have the white book, it does say under 8.4, kind of in the middle, that a session is one meeting. And if it's a meeting that is recessed, adjourned, and reconvened, it's still one meeting. So in other words, sometimes the meeting, like the meeting I had last weekend, for example, it started on Saturday night, it was recessed and then reconvened on Sunday and all day Sunday. One meeting, but that is the meaning of a session. The reason why this needs to be cleaned up, because it's like us choosing what happens next if it's not defined. In Roberts, it says the assembly must decide what they mean by a session, because if we want to default to something else other than one meeting, we need to state it. What it says here, although any society has the right to define in its bylaws what shall constitute a session of the organization, it's usually unwise in ordinary societies, and we're considered an ordinary society, to adopt a rule making regular sessions last over a long period of time. Such a rule would make it possible for the hands of the organization to be tied during that time, since the same question cannot be brought up again during the same session after it is too late to reconsider. I'm going to give an example of that. and I'm making it.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Madam Chair, if I may, I would like to challenge this as being out of order. I think if you say it came up in 2020, it's like more than 4 years old, and there was a motion, it was moved, it was passed, whatever, nothing came of it. But we have a procedure in place for bringing forward notices of motion. I don't think you can pull something out 4.5 years later and say that it's an approved notice of motion. I think you have to go through the new process. So I'm really disturbed by this, trying to come out 4.5 years later and appear on a committee agenda totally out of the requirements of our new bylaws. And as for the last part of it regarding renewal of motions, that has been addressed in our new bylaws in section 5.32. It's clear as day, and it's been clarified. Like the point that I think you argued 4.5 years ago was your concern that somehow the bylaws didn't make reference to a time period, and now it does. So if you want to bring a motion up to revise it, rescind it, whatever, it's the 12-month time period. It's now stated in the new governing bylaw. So, like, I don't feel comfortable doing an end run around our new bylaws on the procedure for putting this on the agenda for something that is 4.5 years ago, and you're probably the only one who remembers anything about it. All I know is that it came up and it was dealt with. I think that reference on your agenda today is April 20th, 2021. That might be when it was dealt with. And if an ad hoc committee didn't get formed back then that's like ancient news. And I think that time alone makes this like null and void. I don't think you can just pull stuff out of the air that didn't get done. I'm confused about how this was allowed to
Okay,
get
so
on the
can I
agenda.
take it that you've given your appeal reasons? You've appealing the ruling of the board. I found it in order, so you're appealing the rule of the board of the chair. So the next thing would be to ask the person who found it in order to speak to it, and I can do that. Then the next thing is to go to you. I think you've stated your reasoning quite clearly. If you want to elaborate some more, you can. And then I can speak a little bit, and then I'm going to ask the question whether the ruling of the chair that this motion is in order. Okay? So
Okay.
I'll speak if I could. So this motion was put forward and it was carried by majority at a board meeting in April after a couple of discussions, and it was brought to the notice of the Bylaw Review Committee. It never made any discussion. Any discussions of the Bylaw Review Committee had to be recognized at their meeting. It's a committee, but you're always recognized at the discretion of the chair, and I take that. And so it never made it onto an agenda, so it remains outstanding. The bylaws hadn't been reviewed during that time. This is like at the height of the pandemic. So it was not considered something that was, with what we had on our plates at the time, a burning issue. We didn't have an ad hoc committee. We didn't have a bylaw review committee until spring of 2023. And for the time from 2023 until December, when our bylaws were adopted, it never made it on the agenda. That was not because it wasn't brought forward to members of the committee. It was brought forward. So it remains an outstanding piece. The original motion is an odd one because it refers to an ad hoc committee. Well, we don't need an ad hoc committee because we actually revised our policy committee to include bylaws. So the perfect place for it to come to is this committee, and with committee rules to discuss it, because it's an outstanding piece. The definition of a session needs to be determined by the organization. Our present adopted bylaws don't give a definition of a session. So knowing that the if any special rules need adoption regarding renewal of motions, it has been taken care of in the bylaws, then fine. The word before that is if. That's been answered. It's rendered moot. But this motion can also be placed under trustees' notices of motion for the next meeting of the Policy and Bylaw Standing Committee. It's in order at this one, I believe, because it's an outstanding piece that, despite requests, didn't make it to the Bylaw Review Committee, and despite requests, didn't make it to a public board meeting because there was enough discussion and it wouldn't have happened. So I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to ask if the ruling of the board for this to be discussed, the reason of a session. I will say that an independent parliamentary professional registered and certified parliamentarian gave their parliamentary opinion on this matter, and with a lot of support, and I'm happy to share that now or at the next meeting. I have shared it already with some members of the board, and it does say very clearly what a new session is and what a session is, and all the support predicated on our then existing bylaws, and with the absence of no definition to session, our new bylaws, it still remains an outstanding piece. So I'm going to say that it's in order and that we refer it to this committee, because we're not an ad hoc anymore, but bylaws are included, for their recommendation on what is meant by the word session. That's what it was. Whether we discuss it today, the recommendation that's there that I'm looking at for this motion is that we recognize it as an outstanding piece of business on the definition of a session that's absent from our bylaws. So at that, I'm going to ask if the ruling to have the recommendation of what is meant by the word session as per our current Robert's Rules of Order, the 12th edition, Chapter 484, and any other pertinent selections, be determined by this committee, and whether that ruling should be sustained. So will the chair's ruling that this is in order be sustained? And I'm going to ask for Trustee Cook. Would you sustain it to be the business of this committee?
That's not
Opposed?
a question.
Trustee Hatfield, no debate. Would you sustain the ruling of the chair? Whether that recommendation to find the word session as per our rules is the work of this committee. I'm looking for your vote. Will the ruling of the chair be sustained? Are you there, Trustee Hatfield?
I'm here.
Okay. Want me to repeat it?
Looking for me to vote?
Yeah, I'm waiting for you to vote.
Are you waiting for me? I didn't hear Trustee Cook, but
Okay, I'm waiting for you. Just your vote.
My vote is no. I'm
Okay,
not.
so the chair has had a ruling and it's been opposed by 2 out of 3, so therefore it's defeated. And we move on. So trustee notices of motion as per bylaw 5.26. Are there any notices of motion? Trustee
There
Cook?
weren't any notices of motion
Pardon me?
received for this meeting.
Yes, any notices of
There
motion?
weren't.
Yeah, for this committee?
I'm speaking to it.
Okay,
There weren't any there weren't any notices submitted for this meeting because they have to go through the process, so nothing has come through. And I would suggest that on the previous matter, if you still want to pursue it, it should be submitted as required by the bylaws.
Okay. Any notices of motion that are going to be declared here and put through on the form that goes through the chair to see if they actually do, in fact, end up on an agenda? Any notices of motion that anybody wants to declare publicly that they're going to submit notice? It's not anything?
That's not the process. That's contrary to the process. We don't state them publicly and then fill out the form. I might be wrong, but you might want to clarify that with the director.
Okay. Right. I have misinterpreted that form because I looked at the form and it goes to the chair of the board with rationale, etc. But it's a notice that you'd like this put on an agenda as a notice of motion. So I guess
It's just part of the
Trustee
process
Cook is
of the new
speaking, saying that
bylaw.
I need to do something first. She's not using her mic, but just so that you can hear. Okay,
Oh, sorry.
so there aren't any notices of motion. I will say then, are there any announcements? Well, I'll just give an announcement that I will be putting a notice of motion forward in the proper form through the chair, so that we can, look at the oral communication and as a minimum for our telecommunications, and that live streaming of committee may actually be not necessary as far as committee rules go. So the trustees, chair of the board will see that going through the correct form. And another announcement is we are going to be meeting as a board, but not as this committee until April. Are we meeting as policy in March again? No. So on behalf of the chair who couldn't make it tonight, just have a good March break. And I will declare the meeting adjourned, having completed all of our business. Thanks.
Thank you.